Hello and welcome to the Free Cheese episode 466. I'm your Joe Dix, joined by Matt Sellner.
Hello.
Mark Augustiniak.
What's up?
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. Season 10 continues this week as we play and rank the hit video game Quake. More on that later, but first, I want to know, is there a song that makes you think of Quake? I know it's not a trick question. I'm not asking you to drop some Nine Inch Nails stuff here. Is there a song you hear and you think of Quake? I'll give you a second to think. I've got two answers for you. One is Secret Loser by Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know why. It reminds me of game development and it reminds me of Quake. And the other one is just the entirety of the Black Album by Metallica. Because I feel like when I got into Quake, I would do a lot of Quake multiplayer while cranking the Black Album by Metallica. I tried to put myself kind of like in that 90s mindset, and I remember like really just digging into the Black Album and Quake simultaneously. So yeah, is there a song or an album that makes you think of Quake?
So, maybe I'll get into the reason. I guess it's part of the reason why I picked the game. But so I never associated anything with Quake because I never really played it. I associated things with Doom, but same kind of answers still apply. I was gonna say like Master of Puppets, something like Master of Puppets. Maybe not that song specifically, but goes right alongside your answer there.
Yeah.
Before it was in Stranger Things. Gotta throw that out. I feel like I gotta say that now. That's where we're at.
Fair. I mean, I'm kind of similar position with Matt. Never really played Quake until recently. And yes, that has got me to listen to Nine Inch Nails a little more than usual. It even got me to buy a hat. So there's that. But because of that, though, it got me into making a playlist kind of built around that, and I threw a lot of some old Static X songs in there. So now I'm like slowly associating Static X with Quake.
I think that fits too. Yeah, Quake was the pre-Dragula era of everything, but that's also like so. Dragula actually makes me think more Twisted Metal than anything, but so yeah, we're talking about Quake this week. First released June 22nd, 1996. Last year, it celebrated its 25th anniversary. Developed and published originally by id Software. Back of the box quote: "From the creators of Doom and Doom 2 comes the most intense, technologically advanced 3D experience ever captured on CD-ROM. Features free and fluid motion, ambient sound, and lighting, and unmatched multiplayer capabilities. Play with up to 15 others via internet, modem, LAN, or serial connection." Quake was and is, I think, still a very... it's a technical achievement. I think it's one of the peak moments of human creation. Not to be too hyperbolic or anything right to start off the show, but it's incredible, and it's led to more stuff than you think, more than I think we'll be able to cover in this here podcast. But we'll talk a little bit about it. Fan mods. A lot of this stuff also started with Doom, so I don't want to completely negate credit from Doom, but mods, speedrunning can largely be, at least in the dominant popular sense of speedrunning, it can directly be traced back to Quake. We'll talk more about that later on. Competitive multiplayer. So many things just tie right back to Quake that you just wouldn't have it without Quake. So we'll talk throughout this episode about, I think, Quake's legacy and its impact and what we hope for Quake as life continues, seemingly. But first, I want to talk about Quake 1. I want to hear your both experience with this game, your history with Quake, what you thought of it, etc. I guess, yeah, let's start with what Quake background. Before we talk about the game itself, I think you both kind of mentioned a little bit, right, that this was a first real dip into Quake. But what about id? What about Doom? What about, generally speaking, what was your kind of background with Quake or any of the id stuff, Matt?
So, funny enough, I think I had played Quake 3 Arena at a very young age. But when I hit single player, and it wasn't like campaigny, right? And I think that threw me off Quake. I mean, not knowing like what that game was or anything. I just knew Quake wasn't named. I had Quake 3 somehow. I played a little bit of it, and it was weird. So I just like always associated like that campaign with that weird emptiness kind of thing. It wasn't until years later I found out that like Quake 3 is just an arena game, and it's really multiplayer focused and has nothing to like story-wise, has nothing to do with 1, 2, or 4. But yeah, so that was one of the reasons why I put it on the list. It was the game I had never played that I should play, and it's probably right up my alley. As far as its software, like, yeah, same thing. I dabbled with Doom. Doom was always hard. There was always like weird, scary areas for me too, like that dark maze where the first invisible dude, like that. I had a jump scare there, and I kind of never revisited the game since then. Yeah, like so, like I played some classic id stuff, and of course, the revival of Doom. I think we've talked at length about that game, both it and its sequel, Eternal. I love both of those re-entries, and it got me all jazzed for id software again. So much so that I bought Rage 2 due to some clever marketing, and yeah, well, that went another way. But yeah, so like I knew what Quake was, and I figured it was time to play it, and then putting it on this list kind of forced me to do it.
So, and have you finished Doom, original Doom?
Probably not, no.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah. I had only done it recently in the last few years, but I think you should definitely go that way too. Yeah, Mark, what about you?
Okay, so I think my history with what people label them as boomer shooters.
Is that okay?
I mean, even fans in the community call it that.
No, yeah.
So it's not. There's no negative connotation there. I think my earliest memory of that is actually Duke Nukem 64.
Mm-hmm.
My brother bought that from Best Buy with this super thick strategy guide that just had like the map layouts and stuff, and I was obsessed with that game. I just thought it was the coolest thing. I wasn't aware of Doom or Quake or anything at the time. I just thought this was a really neat first-person shooter that had like 2D effects on it, and that was my life for a bit. And then I think by the time, probably wasn't until I got a 360, I was starting to be more aware of all like the id games. And then I got Doom on 360, and I played it a bunch, but I don't think I ever finished it when that first released on there. And then, yeah, it wasn't until around, I guess after 2016, when that Doom remake came out, that's when I started exploring the past stuff more, and I beat Doom 1 and everything that had. I was close to finishing Doom 2, and never got to finish that one yet. The Wolfenstein games I didn't really play too much of, as far as like the classic ones. And then my only experience with Quake before this was doing that arena with you all a couple years back around Thanksgiving. Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
And I'm assuming was that Quake Live?
Yeah.
It was Quake Live, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know, like, kind of growing up with all that, I feel like Quake's competitor at that time was Unreal Tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more in that camp. So, like, Unreal Tournament 2003, 2004, that was kind of more my jam with everything. But yeah, I was a lot of this wasn't on my radar until recently.
Yeah, trying to trace back and remember Quake back then. I don't think I've got it. I've told the story before where my mom's friend's son had Wolfenstein on a computer, and I was like, I remember being a small child and hearing about Wolfenstein and giggling because I thought the name was silly and weird. I didn't really contextualize what the game actually was, but I remember that part of it. And then, like, you couldn't really not know what Doom was, but I definitely didn't play Doom that young. And yeah, I mean, again, I think that 2016 Doom reboot was enough to, like, pull us back in, and make us want to go back, which is, I think, impressive, because I think a lot of games that have been around for a long time like that, like, can have a reboot and maybe be successful, but you don't always want to go backwards, or when you do, you find that it's tough, right? Like, I'm sure that people who played Breath of the Wild tried to go backwards and play a number of Zelda games, and they were too different and not, whatever. Going back through even Ocarina, which is, like, so highly regarded, is still, like, kind of tough to get through if you're not used to what that type of game is.
I was gonna say Final Fantasy VII is probably right there with you.
Yeah, right? Like, that's a totally different experience playing that original game. And thankfully, I feel like going back to Doom 1, sure, it's still different, but when you get into the rhythm of it, it really starts to work. The one thing that's actually weird for me now playing the newer ones, because I tried playing some Doom Eternal after beating Quake, I'm happy they did it, but it lets you, in the newer games, take the gun and center it into the middle of the screen in the new game. So I, like, always make sure I consciously flip that there. But yeah, Quake, I've not beaten Quake until this run, for the recording of this episode. I toyed around with it in a number of different iterations. Like, once I got Steam for the first time and was getting good, you know what I mean? Like, getting into Steam, it was like, oh, I should buy all of those Quake games and play all of those Quake games. But I'm a little dumb, so I never quite figured out how to get the episodes working or, like, get all of that stuff. I don't know. It never fully worked for me in that regard. Originally, I think it was just the way I was installing the Steam version or something. I was stupid. Later, I'd end up doing the weirdest version of Kojima's transfarring, and played Quake between the Steam release and the 2DS port that someone made. Because you could take the Steam files and put them on the 2DS and boot the full game, and you could transfer your save file, worked in between both. So very fun, weird, dumb way to play that game. On the DS, you were kind of using the analog stick to move your character, and then the face buttons to strafe and turn and all that stuff. And then you map trigger for
64
shooting
style.
Yeah, full on. So a very different experience for Quake. But it wouldn't be until the most recent Night Dive port from last year that I could easily access that game in a straightforward context, play through it, and complete it. And man, it was fun all the way through. Like, I have vivid memories of, I know it was very recent, it was only the last month or so, but I've got these, like, there's little things in the last month where, like, things I was doing while playing Quake, I think back on, and I associate now with Quake. It's so, I don't know, immersive in a way that you wouldn't think for a game made 26 years ago, but here we are. So the game itself originally released as shareware, which for today's audience, what's the easiest way to explain shareware?
Good question.
I mean, it was kind of like, again, not for things that Quake did first. It was like episodic content, right? Like the same way that you'd buy a game now, like one of those Telltale games, and you'd get an episode every couple of months or whatever. What id would do is, they did this with Doom, they did it again with Quake. You could go to id's website. I guess you could download the first episode for free and play it, but when you reach the end of that chapter, you would need to buy the rest of the version. And back then they would do direct sales to consumers, which is how they kind of like during the Doom days, and even the Wolfenstein days, that's how they kind of skyrocketed internal profits. But with Quake, it was fully that kind of shareware model that I think probably got the game. I don't know, right? It was popular because it was a really fun game, but the fact that you could get that version and play it with people, you could do it all on that first day it released, like that, big for 96. Like the internet was not then what it is now, where you could just drop something like that and experience it. At least a big game like Quake. But yeah, so it is broken up into multiple episodes, right? Or how do they? Is it episodes now? I'm forgetting the nomenclature. Because there's the
Yeah. I mean, they, when I was watching stuff where the devs were talking about it, they would still refer to it as like, your E1 M1s and all that stuff.
Right.
So each episode has a bunch of missions in them.
And each one is 5?
That seemed to be the average.
Except for, I think the final was just the few.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Or it might have been. Nah, it was like somewhere between like 5 to 8, depending on what you count. Because I think some people count like the final level as an episode as well, without it being like labeled an episode. So
right.
And I think you can find secret levels.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and those could be shorter, but still some extra in there.
So generally speaking, it's, a first-person shooter. You work your way from start to finish of a level, and then, throughout each level, you've got a specific number of enemies, a maximum you can kill. You have secrets within the level that are often going to give you some sort of power-up or weapon, or temporary buff that you otherwise wouldn't have. And there's secret exits in each stage as well. You're generally just kind of sprinting and running and killing, right? But there's puzzle solving as well. You have to occasionally, most times, collect one or more keys to unlock certain doors in the area.
This isn't unlike anything you would do in Doom either. This is the part that's the same.
It's basically the next phase of Doom. And I think the thing that kind of transforms this separate from Doom is obviously like the 3D world, where Doom was this kind of faux 3D where it was still like, this is actual like rendering, right?
Yeah, you can look up.
And yeah, right. That's a thing. I guess there's so many different ways we can talk about this one. I guess you want to talk about weapons, maybe?
Can we, before that, like give like a visual idea of what like the aesthetic is like?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because Doom is very much that kind of space sci-fi demon kind of thing going on.
Fantasy too, because you have the knights.
In Doom, in Doom I'm talking about.
Sorry.
No, but so then in Quake, you end up with this more fantasy world. That's also Lovecraftian, right? For sure.
Yeah. Oddly enough, I guess that was just something I didn't really pick up on for some reason. But yeah, it was just like gothic, dark fantasy with just some tech thrown in there. Very
so
strange.
And that's born of this game was based on the D&D campaign that they would play in the id office while making Doom and Wolfenstein and everything. And they kind of took the idea and the story that John Carmack had DM'd and started to turn it into Quake. And I think that's the fun thing. At the end of each episode, you kind of get this text scroll recap about what just occurred and where the current status of you, the player, that character is. And that I felt like really tied back to the origins of this as a D&D campaign. Like it felt like that kind of like DM speak in a way. But
did Doom do that? I feel like if it did, it was only at the very end, and that was it.
Yeah. Exactly. This is like every episode you get that, because remember, like you were buying these things in episodes,
right?
So you kind of get that recap at the end that would leave you like, oh, I gotta order the next one, or whatever. I gotta pop in the other discs here. But yeah, it's funny because you have this like weird dark fantasy world that's gothic horror and things like that. But you're still running around with, like, you start off very beginning, you have an axe, and that kind of feels medieval in a way. But then you've got the shotgun, the super shotgun. A new one for this one is the nail gun and super nail gun. You get a grenade launcher, rocket launcher, and the lightning gun, which just very different than Doom in that sense. Yeah, did you guys have a favorite weapon?
It's I was gonna say my least favorite is probably the axe. I don't think I ever used it. I might have used it like maybe once, but it just didn't feel good to use for me.
No, that was I'm out of ammo somehow. I have to use this thing, and hopefully I can make my way through.
Yeah. I think my favorite is that hybrid gun. I don't know the name of it. It's like the shotgun and nail gun combined.
Is that in the DLC or is that in the core?
That's in the core game. It's like it's basically like it uses the nail ammunition, but it kind of just looks like a shotgun turned into like a minigun. Like the barrel just keeps rotating.
I think it's the super nail gun is the name of it.
Okay. But yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that nail gun decimated, or the super one, I should say, the decimated people. The rockets were fun, but I feel like I did more damage to myself than enemies at numerous different times.
Yeah.
And that Thunderbolt felt like it wasn't a BFG, but it felt like my get out of jail free card. I kind of used it in that way.
Yeah. Same.
Maybe it's the Doom, but I felt myself generally using the super shotgun unless I was out of shotgun ammo or I had a room that like I really needed to clear things out. I'd switch to the super nail gun.
Yeah, like the shotgun was like my safe default, like the double barrel. I would like, all right, I'm going to use this ammo and conserve everything else for when things get really hairy.
Yeah. That's. Mm-hmm.
But man, the nail gun itself. I do that has a tree of its own for, I guess, for topics and conversation and stuff, because why it exists, the look of it and everything. There's a lot of history there.
Let's hit it. Lay it down.
And it's like, well, Nine Inch Nails being like the biggest reference here. What was it? Because that all started because like I forgot who contacted who first, but I know Trent was a big fan of Doom, and for those, Trent Reznor is the lead guy behind the band Nine Inch Nails and is a composer as well. He was a big fan of Doom, and I think was either asked id to provide the music for it, which is mostly just like ambient sounds and stuff, but it definitely strikes the mood, sets the tone, and just because of that mutual, I guess, partnership or friendship with each other, all the ammunition boxes in the game have the Nine Inch Nails logo on it, and even in the Quake logo, it's a nail going through the thing. So it's like nails are like the big theme of like this whole game. And
and super funny, like super weird.
And I learned that and now that you said that like Quake was being like shareware, this makes more sense now when I was watching John Romero talk about the music in this game, because like I guess I'm probably gonna botch it a little bit, but the record company, I guess, was kind of stingy with how the music was going to be implemented in the game, because you couldn't just do MP3s. You had to load in the CD-ROMs that had the tracks on them, and then play that with the game or something. Like it was like a very weird workaround. So like I don't think the music was in the game file.
And honestly, that's one of the things. Every time I'd tried to play Quake up until this Night Dive port, I'd never played it with the Nine Inch Nails soundtrack, because you needed to, especially the Steam version, you have to supply your own soundtrack. And I remember trying to troubleshoot that with Ben, because there's so many. That's another thing too, is like Quake has been ported obviously to so many platforms, but it also on PC. There's so many different ways to play Quake, and loading that soundtrack became kind of a point of contention, trying to get it to work.
And now, I think it's super streamlined now with Bethesda's version or whatever. So that's cool. And then Reznor, I also learned, voices the main character.
I did not know that.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
Ranger.
So I think, Ranger is his name. So and that game has very unique sound files for Ranger when he gets hit or does certain things, and like I love the screaming. It's like as soon as you touch like lava or toxic water or whatever, it's just like the most blood curdling like yelp for like a second, and it's hilarious and I love it. But learning that was Reznor for all that just somehow makes it better. And I do appreciate the ambient music, and I did eventually listen to it, but I gotta admit, at first I was expecting more like music with like a beat or something. I wasn't expecting ambient stuff, so I actually turned it down, and I was playing the first two albums from Nine Inch Nails instead while going around shooting. Because I think at the time, that game came out 96, so Nine Inch Nails only had two albums before that, which was probably their most well-known ones, which is Pretty Hate Machine and Downward Spiral. So I was listening to those before switching back over to the soundtrack.
It's I think really good sometimes to kind of live and walk in that. I feel like I've done a lot more of that in the last few years, where as I'm like getting into something like this that has such a legacy, I try to. It's tough because and impossible to actually recreate it, but like going through and like reading magazines of the era and trying to get that kind of tactile feel, like I don't know. I think there's part of that you lose in just downloading something from Game Pass and playing it.
And I'm not sure if like it would work today as much, where you have some band or musician kind of taking a spotlight in the game. Like for some reason, Nine Inch Nails it feels different compared to like what was it?
Marshmallow in Fortnite.
Well, there's that. But I mean, like, there's always been like a band or two like featured in a game, and they were like not really the focal point, but you knew they were there. Like the presence was there. And man, what was it? It was I just had it. Crap. there was.
Well, there was Hootie and the Blowfish in Super Mario 64. But
Yeah.
you had to collect 125 stars.
Final Fantasy. Crisis Core, I believe. Right, the prequel game.
Yes.
Yes. The character Genesis is based on the musician Gecht, or something like that.
Oh,
And I even think the look is also based on his looks.
Okay.
So like, I'm not sure how much of that one gets a pass or not, but like, maybe because like, you know, we're in America and we're not too familiar with Gecht versus Japan, but yeah, it's sometimes it's a little too hard to ignore when stuff like that happens, but in Quake it seemed just like the right amount of subtlety.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of like weird underground nature to both Quake and Nine Inch Nails that was very like counterculture, subculture thing back then, where now there's no such thing as like counterculture and subculture anymore, because everybody can just consume the same crap and everybody does, and it's all just one big garbage fest.
Well, counterculture is also cancel culture too, so...
Yeah, it's all, everything's a blur.
Like, if Revolution X came out today, do you think that would have been received the same way that it did back then? Because, like, that's, like, Aerosmith focused. Like they are actually in the game, like, talking to you or something. I think it's Revolution X. It's like, it plays similar to Area 51, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
No,
I don't think stuff like that... yeah. No, but stuff like that just doesn't work, because it's like, it needs to be a product. It needs to be, there's a whole machine to it that, no, this was a unique, weird situation. I think you still have this at times in the indie space, right? Like, I don't know. There's that game. Was it like one of those PlayStation Directs or whatever?
Like OKC game.
Yeah. Right. Like, you have stuff like that where like a band will get integrated, but like Nine Inch Nails was huge back then. So it's a little different, like in this case, to get a band so big to then do something not small. I don't want to trivialize it, but like Mark said, it's not straight up, here's Nine Inch Nails music. It's like, here's sounds by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah. And I think that is a little more respectable in that regard. It's kind of like Tron Legacy, where like Daft Punk did the entire soundtrack and they're only featured in like one scene.
Yeah.
And like, so like, they're not really hogging the spotlight. They're just adding to the overall world. So I think that's the trade-off.
And like, and that album, that Daft Punk album, that blends in with their like whole discography. Like, that can be treated as a standalone album without it being a Tron album.
Right. So like, the project that they're with, like, it just meshed so well together, and I think Quake is a similar thing here. Very like industrial.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of the, at least going forward too. But like, I don't see a lot of products like having that, like, all right, this is the music, this is the focus. It's more like the other way. Like, you play something and it's something that the music sticks out so much, and then that becomes like a product, much like 2016's Doom with Mick Gordon. Like, I really did not know who Mick Gordon was until Doom 2016 came out, and it was awesome. It became a name, and like, that music is synonymous for me now with, like, I listen to it randomly sometimes as just like background music, like when I'm like focused on something, you know, like it works. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll randomly get that like title theme stuck in my head that just like yeah. So gameplay wise, we talked that this is a first person shooter
proper.
I can't tell if it's a spider or no, it's not a spider. It's a fly. Something's attacking me.
It's a rotfish.
It might be a rotfish, yeah. But as a first-person shooter of the era, things are so much different now with shooters and where we're at. But back then, you had health pickups, you had armor pickups, you had ammo pickups. And this game was, no different. So you could pick up health packs throughout the world. There were mega health packs that were often hidden as kind of secrets you could discover, or where there were difficult areas, you'd kind of end up with a mega health pack. Green, yellow, and red armor that would boost your armor points up to a certain point. And yeah, no auto heal, no self healing, no crouch to hide and heal. None of that was a thing. You had to avoid taking damage and keep yourself, equipped with armor and health. And once those pickups were gone, they were gone, right? So that was another thing too. It's like no regenerating health pickups. You kind of just were able to get what you got, and that was it. Did you guys find that as a challenge at all, getting through this?
Found it as a breath of fresh air, honestly. Sorry, Warzone's about to happen. The amount of times that I shoot at someone in Warzone and then they run away. I mean, granted, there's an armor system, so like, yes, you do have to carry armor plates or whatever, but like, just the regular health regenerates as well. You know how like frustrating that is, and how dumb, like in the whole scheme of things, that is. I get it. It keeps the player moving in a way, and you don't have to play scared. Like I understand why the mechanic the way it is and why it's so popular. I'm not going to sit here and bash it, because there's the pros for me as well. However, playing is such a breath of fresh air. Just kind of going back to the armor pickups, going back to the health pickups, having to, I don't know, the game makes you play fast. Like I was playing mouse and keyboard. Hit W, you go fast. There's no like the acceleration is very fast, and you're at like top speed, no problem. So the game inherently just makes your player fast, and it makes you want to play fast. And I don't know, there's not that much of an opportunity to go run and hide. And I think you learn that quickly, and you just kind of find out that constantly running, like I took the Doom 2016 approach. If you stand still, you die. If you keep moving, you're probably going to stay alive. And I took, you kind of learn that, I think. And I never found that there was like really an area that was so challenging that I wish I had the newer generation of shooters where your health regenerates, or I could kill something and get a hit health pickup or whatever. I never really felt that. I felt it was very well, unless Night Dive, because I played the Night Dive version. Unless they balance something maybe that I don't know about in the background, but like I felt this game was very fair on normal difficulty. I'm sure it's hard on hard difficulty, but it's a hard difficulty. So like that's the point, right? So yeah, no, I felt it was a breath of fresh air from what I typically play as a first-person shooter, but it worked. It was fair, and it was awesome to kind of relive that. But in a sense, that the 2016 Doom game and Doom Eternal had armor and health systems, so it's not like totally brand new if you've been kind of paying attention to the area a little bit.
It's funny, you mentioned the speed too, which I think is something unique to id games, right? Like a lot of shooters have become that slow, methodical, step forward, shoot, fall back. And I think there's a lot of like the military approach to shooting games
go
now.
To a bunker, cover, grenade, pop some people, push up to the next checkpoint, and then you literally see save checkpoint and you feel safe. Yeah.
But this is just constantly like, it's like a game of pinball where you are the ball and you're just constantly taking things out. Mark, you mentioned something while playing it I thought was interesting, where you said you actually turned off the auto sprint. Did you stick with that throughout the entirety of your play, or?
So it was like a case-by-case thing. I noticed a lot of the maps, the way they're designed, I felt like if I'm trying to platform somewhere or like get to somewhere, I overcorrect myself a lot when I'm too fast. And like if I'm trying to jump to a platform, I'll like overcorrect and then fall off because of that. So I turn off the sprinting, and only held like I would hold in shift when necessary if I'm fighting or running or whatever. But I would prefer to just go at the slower pace for most of it, unless like an arena like boss fight happened, then I would go and keep the speed on so I don't have to hold in shift the whole time, and then start doing that. So I would use it when necessary.
Funny enough, I think that would trip me up more, the switching back and forth. I feel like if I just like kind of like maybe fail the first 2 times, but just then get used, like I don't know, that would trip me up more. I feel like
I've done so much save scumming in this game, because that's another thing. There's no auto-saving in this. You have to save your progress as you go yourself. It all depends on you. So, like, I would make some of the dumbest mistakes, and just because I'm so used to, like, switching my hand from moving to hitting F5 or F9, navigating the menus wasn't really much of a challenge for me, or a chore or whatever.
What level did I guess that's good to point out. What level did we all play on?
You talking about difficulty?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I want to say...
I didn't know.
What are the...
It was easy, normal,
Yeah,
hard.
normal... Is that all they... Right, they're not hurt me plenty. None of that is in this, right?
No.
Yeah, okay, then yes. Normal is what I did. For this run to actually, like, get through it. I've tried Nightmare before, just to see. And that is brutal. I even... Back when I tried Nightmare, this is years back, like when I first got that Steam version. The Steam version also, originally, the old version, right? Like before it's been updated, you, by default, or maybe this was when I was trying it on like a Raspberry Pi or something, but by default, you would have the original control scheme, which most modern first-person shooter players are going to be largely generally familiar with mouse and keyboard controls. But back then, this was not mouse and keyboard. This was keyboard, period. And it's kind of insane to think about the fact that people are good at this game with arrow key to mouse, effectively mouse look in a way, and then your still WASD for movement, right?
I don't know.
So.
I didn't go back to this.
Yeah, it's
I
been
would
a while since I've
assume it
actually
would
done
be.
it.
That's a
Oh no, wait. OG Quake. That was not the case.
Yeah, I don't think it is
because
it's
like A was not moving left. That was something else.
Was it not strafe? I forget now.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think one of those buttons, one of those keys over there made me look up. So like, I don't know. Like trying to bind those keys to modern controls, I didn't know how to do it, so I just gave up on it.
I remember trying, like, fighting with it so much to pull off that first version I tried to get mouse stuff to work. But yeah, I can't. Did either of you mess around with the console menu at all?
No.
Typing in any commands or any of those fun things?
No. I saw in just the options in general where I think you could turn on cheats, but I didn't do any of that.
No, I never really. Like, I knew it was there, but I just kind of wanted to play through the game as true to its original state as I could.
Speaking of, like, weapons and power-ups and stuff, how do y'all feel about the Ring of Shadows?
The Ring of Shadows.
The Invisible Boy, right?
Yeah.
Unless you, like, shoot something, then it
Right.
sees you, right? But
Well,
there's
there's a little fine print there, I feel. If an enemy has already seen you, and you use
Right.
it, they still see you.
right.
Which I don't think should be the case. But I also haven't seen what I look like while using the Ring of Shadows, since it's first person.
Right.
So I don't know if it's like a predator cloaking situation where you can still see like an outline of them or something. Or
Yeah, they
whatever,
know what to look
but,
for.
Yeah. But, like Quake and, like Doom and Wolfenstein, the HUD, your character's face is down there and will show the progression of how badly you're hurt or if you're powered up or what have you. In Ring of Shadows, it's just your helmet and then your eyeballs, and that's it. And it's like the
That's
creepiest
it.
thing. But I did enjoy that.
Yeah, I think that's a good look. I think I ran into a lot of trouble with the Vor I feel like I always got spotted by the Vor when I was trying to use the Ring of Shadows. I felt like they could see through it no matter what. It wasn't the case. I just feel like where I was getting those pickups, I was always... There's one room in particular.
Are they the big ones that shoot the lightning?
That's the Shambler. The Vor is the one with the spider legs.
That shoots projectiles.
Yeah, with the heat-seeking purple spiky thing. Okay.
Yeah. There was that one spot, I don't know if you guys remember it or not. It's like I forget which episode, but it's like a corridor that kind of like wraps around in a curve, and there's just nothing but Vor in there. They're like hidden under the stairs and stuff. And then there's a couple of Death Knights as well. Ugh, terrible section. And I was like so low on health and ammo and everything at that point. It was rough.
I definitely like took advantage of figuring out how to like cheese the game. Where like I would find blind spots or like find a vantage point where like the AI didn't know how to get around an obstacle or would just keep running back and forth, not shooting me, and I would just like lay in the grenades or something.
But the fun thing is about this is like as clever as you can be in those moments, so can the AI. Like there's parts where like you're getting shot or whatever and you're like, where's this coming from? And it's like they're clipping through something or whatever. It's it's frustrating,
like I guess kudos to the game because I was trying to cheese it and it wouldn't let me. Like it knew that you would try to do it, but there's like a bridge right at the end of a portal. Like the portal's right on the other side of this bridge. And under the bridge is another walkway, but it goes another direction. So it kind of makes like a cross formation, but one's going over the other. And like as soon as you go down, it triggers two of those like hellhound looking things. They're not dogs, but they're the things that leap at you.
The fiends.
Yeah, like you see the one in front of you coming at you, and you think you can get by it. And you kind of can't because it's too narrow of a path, but there's also one that's spawned behind you that's jumping at you, and you never know that one is hitting you until you get hit. So I thought I could just speed run it and get right to the exit, but there was no way around it. You have to jump back down and walk around this big circle again just to deal with that. I was like, all right, game, kudos.
Yeah, this game, I was sweating a lot. Not like in the term of like, oh, I'm sweating, I'm trying my hardest here. I was just sweating just because of the pure action and just how much this game can throw at you and stuff like that. I felt like there were times where I just wanted to like let go of the keyboard and the mouse just to like crack my knuckles, just just a little bit of sense of relief. As soon as I would do, every time a hidden wall with an enemy would pop, I could never successfully pick up my hands off the mouse and keyboard in this game. And like I think that I was gonna say this earlier when you were talking about the ambient music, but I feel like the ambient music feeds into you don't know what's behind every corner or even behind you. And like by mid-game, you get to the point where like, all right, if I pick up something, I know one of these walls or something dumb's going to happen and I'm going to be... But like they kept doing it in clever ways or in unexpected ways where you would just sit at a corner of like a hallway, like, it's just an L-shaped hallway. There's no up. Literally sit there and I'm like looking at both ways, clear. Lift off hands, something behind me comes out, and it's like a fiend or a knight or something just started chopping at me, and it's like, man. And, they give you the enemy count and at the end of these levels, and it's like, 36 enemies, and you killed 28 of them. It was like, it felt like I played 6 enemies. Every
it
level.
Feels like a lot more.
Every level. It felt like I only killed 28. It felt like I killed 1,000. And that's not even...
I think
it's not even ones including
your point exactly... Yeah, No, the fact that I felt like I kept getting comfortable with the surprises, like you kind of felt like I'm going to do this and it's going to trigger an event, and you start to like feel like you pick up on the patterns, but I still was caught by surprise repeatedly, where it'd be like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick this up and that wall is going to fall. Then it wouldn't happen, and you're like, oh, okay. Then you take 3 steps and then something else triggers it. There's traps all over the place. There's so many things hidden within this world that are just waiting for you or waiting to surprise you and catch you off guard.
The secrets in Doom, which is kind of like, this is just, it's coming from that, right? I I never really took as much time as I probably should have to try to look for those secrets in Doom. And just because how that game was built, it was, for me, just a little tough to figure out, especially with, like, you're limited with aiming and all that, because it kind of auto-aims for above you.
You don't have jump
you.
either in Doom, right?
No.
No, you don't.
So, I wasn't as incentivized to try to go out and look for that stuff. I would, unless it was obvious, I'll go for it. But Quake had me actually, like, when you accidentally, like, shoot a wall and then that door opens, or you find those red panels that you can shoot in the distance that will trigger something.
Yeah.
I've actually, it got me doing that every level. Like, I wanted to look for the secrets as much as I could. And, sometimes, you can, and it's fine. I move on. Not too stuck on them. But when I do find them, I just found myself just doing that more and more the deeper I got into the game, and it kind of became almost therapeutic in a way whenever you find that stuff.
Because there's like a reward to it, right? But like it's also equally as disappointing when you get to the end of a level, you feel like you'd scraped every corner and you had 0 out of 3 secrets. You're like, this, what? How did I...
Also, like, I feel like it wasn't every level, but I feel like there was a good handful of levels too that like teased the secret right at the beginning of and it just teased it, and like, well, how do you get up there, or over there or something, and like you're looking around immediately and it's not there, and then the end of the level, something happens, you kind of go in this corner, and then boop, you pop out there, like, ah, shit, there it is. That's how you get here. Just the whole level. There's so many good things like that, and I think more so. Watch me play Shovel Knight on the website. You're going to see how bad I am at finding secrets. It's bad. This game, though, I don't know. I felt like I could see the teases of something, and it made me look around in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise. And I would look at the ceiling, and I'm like, oh, right. It's right. It's right there. Or like just the fact that jumping exists in this game and not in Doom. I think like... like, how can I manipulate this platform and get, like, the right jump and get over there? And it's not manipulating the game. I definitely think, the design, Carmack, Romero, like, everyone on that team designed it that way on purpose for you to manipulate it to get over there.
And because the jumps are so small as it is, like, you can't...
It's all, like, momentum-based.
Mm-hmm. Side note, when we're talking about enemies real quick, did... Nintendo rip off the zombies when making the Re-Dead in Ocarina of Time? Because I got so much of that vibe from...
I don't think the Re-Dead throw their parts at you.
No, but just the way they kind of like move and scream and stuff, like everything kind of has that.
And you can only kill them with explosives.
Yes, yeah, they have to be torn apart. They will.
I guess I can see some similarity there.
My defense to that is like this isn't your hardware limitations. Like I don't know, like what can you do with a zombie at this time on a 64-bit console or in when this game come out in 96?
Quake got ported to 64, so
it did. No, I'm not complaining about it. I think I love the.
They definitely had similar sounds. Like sound effects or whatever.
They just reminded me of it. It seemed like, when Ocarina came out in 98, it seemed like they maybe had played a little bit of Quake when they made the Re-Dead.
Also, shout out, I think there's a Digital Foundry video on Quake. Just the amount of times that John Linneman says voodoo graphics is such a great, awesome thing. Like, it reminds you how far we've come.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. I want to... There's so many things about Quake and Doom and id and all of those things out there for you to consume, but I think the John Linneman retrospective on Quake is I don't know, it's incredibly recommended reading at this point if you're into Quake and curious at all. Additionally, speaking of recommended reading, Masters of Doom, if you've not read it, is still, I think, a super fascinating look at not just how these games were created and the stories behind the people who made them, but I think also I really loved it for the kind of the tale that it told, that if you, I don't know, kind of if you can dream it, you can do it in a way, right? Like it's just like these people that started id just had the idea and the follow through, and nothing was going to stop them from doing what they wanted to do, and they did it. And they both, I say they both because it really is a tale of two Johns, but it's more than that started and founded and created all these games and did id. But I mean, both John Romero and John Carmack ended up where they're at now because of those beginnings. And I don't know, it's super fascinating, inspiring. I think wholly great. Maybe one day we'll actually get that TV show. I don't. You know what? I feel better. Matt, you brought up Masters of Doom earlier, and not Masters of Doom, Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
And Stranger Things, and the kid. What's in this season? The stoner pizza boy. Mm-hmm. Is the one who was cast to play John Romero in that Masters of Doom TV show.
Oh.
So we might, maybe, with the popularity of that show, maybe that will... I don't know. There's been no movement or talk about this Masters of Doom show for like 3 years, so I'm not super confident.
Well, what comes out first, Flash or that show?
I can't even... I don't know. Bosses in the game. There's 2 major bosses in the game, which I think was cool. I remember the first time I got to that first boss at the end of the first episode. It's this big arena, this towering presence, and like you're just running around this big arena. I don't know, how many times did you guys try to actually shoot the thing before realizing what the hook of the...
All my video game senses kicked in. I didn't shoot at him for long before I realized nothing was happening because there was no feedback. Like every enemy in this game thus far has some kind of sound or, some kind of feedback. I felt like, I don't know, maybe. But, or it's just like quick enough to die with the weapons I had. So I shot at it for a little bit, but in keeping moving around the room, always stay moving, I kind of found myself upstairs, and that's when I saw like the levers and things, or what was it, switches? I think it was just pressure plates, right?
Yeah, it was for the rods
you had to bring down like the electric rods and then zap them. Yeah. So like I saw the pressure plates, and I saw that thing come down, and then it went back up. And then I stepped on the one pressure plate for the electricity, and then I kind of figured out what to do. I think it took me like 2 deaths. The first time, like I had just figured it out when I died, and the second one I just died from being shot at. But yeah, no, interesting design. I like that. It was a good approach to something in this game.
How about the final boss? Were you able to figure out the telefrag?
Nope, probably never would. And I would either save scum that portal for 30 times. Don't feel bad looking that one up.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Yeah,
I tried. I was trying so hard.
I got to that end thing 5. You know how hard that level is just on its own, just to get to the portal? I did it 5 different times before I looked it up. Because I wanted to figure it out, but I couldn't.
I had no ammunition for anything at that point.
Me neither.
And I'm just
all
like...
this ammunition everywhere. Then, boom, we'll use an axe all of a sudden for the first time. I'm like, goddamn vor.
And, like, jumping through that portal, I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand where I was coming out of or whatever. So I had to look that up. And I was like, oh, that's all you do? You just gotta... Okay.
Still, even when you know, it's incredibly tough. It's difficult to pull off, but
I feel like I want to save the listener some time.
Yeah, if you've not done that yet.
With that tip. If you get to that final boss and you see some little weird floating spiky thing going around.
It means something. It's not just aesthetic.
Don't shoot it.
Yeah.
Wait, you can kill it?
Don't waste your ammo.
Oh, yeah. Ammo, that level.
And once you find the portal, we'll save it. But once you find the portal, wait for that little thing to go through the final boss, and then you want to teleport.
Well, the other thing, too, is once you see the portal, make sure you take 3 steps up, because there's more surprises right in front of the portal. So take out those enemies, and then save, and then try to figure out the portal.
Save scum your entire way through this.
That was the only level I've really had to do. There was a couple levels where... it it was a tough spot. I persevered, but I didn't have much health, and I would die like next room or the second room. I would save after replaying the level up to that point where the tough fight was. I would save, or I would save right before that tough fight, just in case I didn't come out or whatever.
Right.
And I would save usually after it, just so that way I wouldn't have to do it again as I progressed, no matter what health. Because I felt like the game was fair, so you could find health or gather it, or at times play with 30 health and kind of dip and dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge your way through some stuff.
And like the look on Ranger's face after you beat the final boss, just like that that grin. So I guess he has that grin the whole time. I'm feeling on the character model.
Probably, yeah.
Well, it was just how that was just how happy Trent Reznor was to be involved in this game.
I think he loved it. I think he wanted to do the second one, but scheduling conflicts didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, things that id changed at that point. It was a different game. The game Quake 2 takes a much different, more sci-fi approach than the weird medieval kind of dark fantasy world that we've got here. Have you guys played much of the multiplayer at all?
For this one, no. But it's funny that you bring it up, because now, like, there is a weird memory tethered to this, where I remember I was probably in like 3rd or 4th grade, but I was visiting a friend's house. We were just hanging out playing games in the basement, but in order to get, go through the living room, then you get to the basement, his older brother was on a computer playing, I'm pretty sure it was Quake. I couldn't tell if the map was an Unreal Tournament map or a Quake map, but because of the way that the jumping was, and it was like such a simple layout, and I think they were in space, but I couldn't tell. But I remember other levels. I'm pretty sure he was playing Quake multiplayer, but I only saw it for like not even a minute. But that triggered that memory. So no, I haven't played it, but I saw it before.
I played a little bit of this newer port, just doing like random online stuff. And it's fun, but it's fast. You die like right away. It's like so immediate. But I think we should play a bit together. Probably, if you're listening to this episode as it goes up, this week is QuakeCon, and I'm very, very hopeful for some big Quake stuff. But before all of that gets announced, I kind of want to play a little bit of this multiplayer and just toy around.
Yeah, definitely because of my Unreal Tournament background, I have to remember to, like, alright, you can't do, like, double tap left or right to do, like, side jumps or back jump or forward jump. Like, Unreal Tournament has all that. So I gotta like unlearn some muscle memory.
Really quickly, I want to talk a bit about, not in depth by any means, because we could spend another 3 hours just on this stuff. But we talked earlier, Quake led to a lot of mods. It had a very active modding scene, as did Doom, of course. Quake was no different. The impact of Quake's mods on video games alone is just remarkable when you really think about everything that it impacted. There's crazy stuff that people pulled off, like Quake Rally, which is an arcade racing game. There's Airquake, which is a third-person multiplayer dogfighting game. There's Kickflip Quake, which is a skateboarding game. There's all of this kind of crazy stuff, but there's some other ones. There's a very popular Quake mod that you might recognize. The name was Team Fortress, which was released in 97 and was a team and objective-based multiplayer game that ended up, of course, Valve bought the developers, and they created Team Fortress Classic for Half-Life, and then, of course, Team Fortress 2.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now.
You also had we talked, I mentioned rather speed running, but in addition to speed running, Quake was also kind of the dawn of esports in a way. So really Doom was, when you think about it. Doom held one of the first esports competitions where John Carmack awarded the winner with his Ferrari back then.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, there's a website called Speed Demos Archive, which hosted videos of people playing through Quake at nightmare difficulty. And they uploaded the videos calling them Quake Done Quick, which may sound familiar to anyone who's paid attention to speedrunning in the last 10 to 15 years. But Quake Done Quick directly evolved into what we now know as Games Done Quick, which is actually, GDQ Games Done Quick now runs pretty frequently. They've got a pretty regular broadcast schedule. But, for the last 10 years or so, the big ones have been the January and summer, January and July, typically, the twice annual streaming events for charity where people play games incredibly fast, doing kind of marathon demos. But yeah, Quake's impact, again, that is the highest level quick version of whatever, skimming the top of Wikipedia, if you will. But there's so much to Quake that ended up impacting, I think, the games that followed it, influencing genres, et cetera, et cetera. Huge, crazy, crazy long history. My question to you, to kind of close out our Quake conversation here before we rank it, is what does Quake's legacy mean to you? And we'll start with Matt.
I always thought of it as the birth of proper Z-axis 3D. I never played it until now, but that's just kind of how I was it did two groundbreaking things. They made the first 3D shooter, which it's technically Wolfenstein, but I think got popularized with Doom. And then they made the first proper 3D first person shooter with Quake. And I think they both games have their own unique formula, despite being the first. That still stands out, I think, today. And Quake. That's Quake. There's not much more to it. That's Quake's legacy to me. It's like the dawning of the proper first-person shooter.
Yeah,
Mark, what about you?
To kind of echo that a little bit, or to go along with it, I agree with all that. It as much good that this game has done, I believe it is also a product of crunch and not really wanting to be the full image that they had wanted it to be. It was supposed to be more than this. It was supposed to be, believe it or not, more revolutionary, ideally. And so, even though it kind of became one of the last games before all the shit hit the fan, I guess, with that company and what have you, there is that kind of tied around it. But at the same time, I think we just spent all this, an hour talking about just how much we enjoyed the game, and yet this was kind of a rushed product towards the end. There's probably definitely some blemishes here and there. There's going to be some imperfections depending on the player or whatever. But I think that's okay. They were still able to pull off something great here despite all that. And I think that is something worth acknowledging, that you don't always have to try to achieve perfection with it. Sometimes you just got to work with what you got and make the best of it. And I'm not sure how many games really do that now, because we're in a state of patches and updates and versions every other day, so it's just the normal thing. But there's something to be respected there, to where dealing with all sorts of variables and still trying to make the best of it. Not saying that nobody else does that in the industry, devs don't do that today or anything. That's not a knock on anyone, but just something about this one feels different compared to other things.
Yeah, I get that's the part you always forget about is like the ambitions of it ahead. There was going to be this big RPG. It was going to be this whole other thing, and they had toyed around with that, built that. They were, originally inspired by Virtua Fighter, and there was the idea to build 3D melee combat in this game, which third-person melee. I mean, not 3D. Yeah, but like that would have been a totally different experience.
Yeah, because it wasn't supposed to be a shooter.
Yeah, but even still in the end, like they end up building something where they did push everything forward. Like even where they had to sacrifice what they did, like it still ended up being, I mean, the multiplayer aspect alone was something just unprecedented at that point. Because it's one thing to kind of do what you can do through that single player campaign, but then to be able to independently track that for multiplayer across the board.
Yeah, that's just that speaks volumes when like you make something and maybe you're not so proud of it, but other people find other reasons to love it that you probably didn't think about, and that can spawn so many things.
Yeah, this is one of those games that I think this is the one where if I could time travel back and experience it in real time as it was happening, this would be the one.
It's weird because I think this should have been the one, just with the way me as opposed to you two, just in terms of age, it almost was like I was meant to play this one and you all were meant to play Doom. And then that would have been the proper introduction to video games. Yeah, I don't know. I was just there's just that level of like this has that like that SNES to 64 or the first. I don't know. It feels like that.
Yeah, I feel you on that. It's definitely the jump.
So now we've reached the point in the episode.
Before you do that, that's why I gotta say the words bunny hopping. Just one time,
Thank you.
I didn't know where to put it in here. I was gonna say maybe during speed running. I don't know. I just had to say it one time. Out of context.
I literally have that written out in my notes and didn't say it either. So thank you for mentioning that. I don't have more than just the word written, but yeah. Did you get good at bunny hopping in this?
Not good at it. No,
I feel like
in the heyday of Quake Champions, I was getting there. I was. Yeah. I'm not going to say I was good. I was seeing the number go higher though.
Yes. Oh yeah. Watching. Yes. The speed counter, all that fun stuff. Yeah. And I think if we tried some multiplayer stuff, you'd practice more of that with rocket jumping and all that fun stuff. Yeah. Which we should toy around with. But alas, it is time to rank Quake on the list. If you want to follow along with the list and see everything where we've ranked it so far, you can do that at thefreecheese.com/thelist. I think this might be the new number one.
Ooh, you went that high.
I went that high. Where are you at?
2.
Okay. Mark?
3.
Okay. So, yeah, I kept fighting internally, like, all week long, knowing we'd get to this point. I was like, is this better than Wii Sports? Like, is it? And I think that there are some parts by the end of this where I do I don't want to call it unfair, but, like, there's just parts of this where, like, it does start to feel taxing, where in a Wii Sports, it's a totally different experience. So it's hard to compare the two, but the approach to playing Wii Sports versus this is, different. And I feel like
you might equally sweat though.
That's a good point. Yeah. So why is this one not above? I guess, Mark, you are putting this below Portal 2, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It's tough. It feels wrong a little bit, but I don't know. I guess just in the end, Portal 2, I feel, has everything tethered together a little better in my eyes. just as an overall experience. I love Quake, but I'm always going to look at it as a time capsule. And for some reason, I don't look at Portal 2 that way. I don't know why. I don't know. It just feels so different and refreshing in a way. Not that Quake wasn't, but yeah, I think it's just the overall package is just why I'm putting it above it.
Matt, why do you put it up above Portal 2?
I think the shocking, just how much, again, playing the Night Dive one, but still, just shocking how well the game still holds up. Like, you could tell me that this is a game developed by any studio that's brand new, and I wouldn't really think twice about it in terms of putting it in there with first-person shooters and stuff of now. You look, especially when you compare it to what it did in the last few years, the reboot of Doom and Doom Eternal, like, it plays very similarly. Of course it's going to be dated a little bit in terms of like graphics and the glory, like mechanics, like glory kills and stuff like that, but it still fits right up there. And when you compare, because I, again, like you, was thinking about this list and how to talk about it or whatever. Portal 2 had those moments of like, I figured out the puzzle finally. And, you get that satisfying feeling. But I actually had equally satisfying things clearing a room that seemed impossible the first time I would die there or whatever. And there was a couple puzzles I had to look up in Portal 2 as well. And maybe I'm dumb, but like, I went to the guides for like 2 different puzzles in my run there, so I don't feel bad about looking up how to beat the final boss
I did too.
in Quake. So like that negates that argument. And I don't know. I think just in terms of pure gameplay, I just think I like the shooting genre better than the puzzle solving genre. I think, but it's negligible. Like I don't have a problem putting Portal 2 above Quake. But then in terms of the Wii Sports argument, I think Wii Sports is such a complete package. Like really, like just from the 5 main sports to the fact that you have the single player opportunity of going pro in all of them. You have, and that, getting to that pro level, there is an increase in difficulty. Like you're challenging yourself there during that run. It is easy to play with people. Obviously Quake has multiplayer, but like it is super easy to play with people in Wii Sports. And then on top of that, you got all the challenge. It just, when you encapsulate all those different things, it just feels like such a complete package where, and not to say Quake isn't like a big package. You have multiplayer, you have co-op, you have single player, but I don't know. It's just, I think that wide variety, and again, I can't get past the fact that Wii Sports came packaged with your Wii. And it was probably the best game on that platform.
Yeah.
I do, Joe, I do want to hear your reason for it being number 1, but before that, I am now convinced to put Quake in 2nd place.
All right.
No, honestly, I throughout the week I kept feeling like this was going to be the new number 1, but I kept finding reasons for Wii Sports to continue to beat it. So I don't necessarily think it needs to be 1. I just figured I'd shoot high and work down from there. But no, I think the big thing that I hadn't pointed out in our whole hour-long discussion that Matt just summed up perfectly is how new the game still felt playing it. There's certain things where I feel like, we've been around for the majority of video games, generally speaking, and now we've got greater access to things that have been around for ever, right? Like you right now within a few minutes could play practically any video game that's ever been released. And I think that with that, you end up earning and learning a sense of, I don't know, you can start to approach things with a different view, right? Like the same difference if you go back and watch a movie from the 50s, like you kind of contextually have to view it differently. Certain things will kind of transcend that and you can see them for what they are now, but there's certain things where like looking at it with a historic lens ends up letting you appreciate the thing more, knowing what it was up against at the time, right? And I think that's been a thing I talked about at the top of the show, and I continue to talk about it, but kind of immersing yourself in the state of that era ends up helping you really get a feel for what things were when they were released. And that was the interesting thing with playing Quake, is I didn't have that. You know what I mean? Like it felt like a brand new modern video game. Feel wise, right? Like, yeah, it looks like graphics from 26 years ago, but it felt like a new experience. And it's not the same. Like when you play something on Game Boy or you play something, whatever, like they don't necessarily always feel like modern experiences. They feel like things that there's a concession for some reason. And this feels like there's no concession even 26 years later.
It did make me buy a hat.
You got the hat, you know?
Got the hat.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you were talking about, like, the graphics. There are new games that strive for that art style.
Yeah.
So, I think that is...
Yeah.
I think that's up to personal taste there, too. Like, yeah. I mean, if you want to go for the old-timey look, like, I say old-timey relative, but, like, you know, you want to go for that, go for it. It still looks good if you do it right. I think Quake looks good. Yeah. I mean, played on 1440p, of course, you know, but...
Yeah.
Despite that, I think the models themselves still hold up, and you know, for what they are.
Yeah, fully.
And whenever it comes with me, like judging things, like say whenever we do this list, I always have my initial reaction, and then after we talk about it, you know, things start to fluctuate possibly here and there, and then I don't trust myself even further because we're in the moment. So of course I'm gonna appreciate it probably more than I might later, or maybe I'll appreciate it more later. I don't know, because I could have. I'm sure if we talked about it longer, I could be like, you know, let's just fuck it, put it first place. But
yeah. No, I like it too. I'm happy with it too. And that's Quake. It's not Quake. There's so much. We could do 3 more episodes on Quake.
Let me ask this question. Quake or Doom?
I gotta replay Doom and see how I feel about that, but
like
my gut is...
As franchises or just the first in there? The Doom 1 and Quake 1?
Yeah, we'll stick to that, because I know that the franchise answer can get weird.
I'd rather play Quake 1 than Doom 1.
Yeah, I think, Quake 1 over Doom. Again, once you get into the franchise, Doom has the reboots, too, so...
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
hopefully that'll be changed this week.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll see. Yeah, check out Quake. You can play Quake on anything at this point. And thankfully there's a community of people that even outside of the newer port from last year, there's a community of people that much like they port Doom to everything, they're porting Quake to everything too. So stay tuned for a toaster, OLED, or coffee machine port coming soon. Next week, come back, we're going to talk about Konami's side-scrolling shooter. That's right, Parodius. As we play Parodius Da. Or... well, we'll save that for, next week. Parodius, next week. Talking about that classic. Until then, if you like this episode, you can find it and the rest on thefreecheese.com. That's it. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. See you next time. Bye.